Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the third eagle of the apocalypse and the co-prophet of the end times. In the next 8 years, there will be billions and billions of people who will die on planet Earth before Armageddon in the year 2017. In fact, Jesus says that unless I do return, there will be no flesh left on earth. Now, many of these billions of victims will be innocent. That is, they will be classified as martyrs and they will go to heaven. And some of these will return with Jesus at Armageddon. So the question is, if you are a victim in these next 8 years, will you be innocent? That is, will you be martyred and go to heaven? And secondly, if you are martyred, will you also return with Jesus when he returns at the Battle of Armageddon? Now, in order to discover what the future may have in store for you, we need to look at the 3 different categories of martyrs as described in St. John's book of Revelation. Let's take a look at St. John's secret cryptogram. As you know, St. John divided up the 15 end-time chapters of the book of Revelation, that is chapters 6 through 20, into 36 subsections. And following each of the 4 horsemen are 9 of those sections. In the first section, that is following the white horse of apostasy, practically all of these events have already occurred. For example, the first trumpet has sounded, which announced Henry VIII. Over here we have the first bowl, which refers to the martyrs of Adolf Hitler. Following him came the 5th bowl and the martyrs of communism. And now we are up to the last event following the white horse of apostasy. That is the 5th herald angel. And the martyrs in this section refer to mainly the martyrs of abortion in America and in most of the countries of the world. And also Christian martyrs in countries such as China and in the Muslim countries of Africa. All of these martyrs can be found described in chapter 6. These are the martyrs of the apostasy. In chapter 6, verse 9, "And when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God, and for the testimony which they held." Now these martyrs are not necessarily Christian, because if they are innocent, they symbolize Jesus. In verse 10, "And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, do you not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on earth?" Notice these are not like the early Christian martyrs who prayed for forgiveness of their enemies, because they ask for vengeance. And we know they are martyrs because white robes were given to each one of them. The 9 events on St. John's cryptogram, which follow the red horse of war, primarily deal with World War III. For example, we find the huge army, the 200 million man army which crossed the river Euphrates. Over here we find Babylon is fallen, is fallen. This refers to the 2 nations which will fall in World War III, primarily England and the United States. St. John describes several more events in World War III. The drying up of the Euphrates River to make way for the kings of the East. And again, the 6th herald angel announces the fall of Babylon. Following the World War, of course, we come to the black horse of famine. And in chapter number 7, after St. John describes the 12 tribes of Israel who will be sealed by the prophet Elijah, he then lists the martyrs of this great war. Chapter 7, verse 9, "After this I saw a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations, kindreds, peoples, and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes and palms in their hands." Now St. John has already described a 200 million man army. Therefore, this great multitude, which no man could number, must be even greater than hundreds of millions. Undoubtedly, he is talking about billions of people. They are from all nations, kindreds, peoples, and tongues. That means they are not just Christians. And because they are clothed in white robes and palms, That means they are martyrs, and they are in heaven. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, "Salvation to our God, which sits on the throne, and to the Lamb." Now they are praising Jesus, so even though they come from every kindred, people, nation, and tongue, when they get to heaven, they of course acknowledge that Jesus is the Son of God. Following the red horse of war comes the black horse of famine. And we find, after St. John lists the martyrs of World War III, comes the appearance of Wormwood, who is the false prophet. At the same time, God sends the two prophets, Enoch and Elijah, back to earth. God finds it necessary to send the two prophets because two of the barriers to the Antichrist, that is, the United States and the Roman Catholic Church, have been destroyed. After the last two barriers to the Antichrist, that is, the prophets Enoch and Elijah, are assassinated, finally the Antichrist, the beast from the sea, comes on the scene. And it's only then that we discover the last martyrs of the book of Revelation in chapter 14. Chapter 14, verse 13. "And I heard a voice from heaven, saying unto me, Write, Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord, from henceforth. Yea, said the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them." Now this is the first time St. John has used blessed to describe these martyrs. Blessed indicates that these are one of the three groups who will fight with Jesus at Armageddon. Notice that St. John says, "from henceforth." In other words, the martyrs who came before this do not qualify to return for the millennium, but from henceforth. In other words, during the reign of the Antichrist, these martyrs will return with Jesus. These blessed martyrs are one of the three groups who will reign with Jesus. A second group are the protected Catholics. Blessed is he that watches and keeps his garments. This group must watch in the desert for the Antichrist and the Antichrist agents. The third group are the raptured Protestants. Blessed are they who are called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Thus we see from St. John's cryptogram that of the billions and billions of people who will die during the next 8 years, only a tiny fraction, that is about 144,000, will return with Jesus at the Battle of Armageddon. In chapter 17, verse 14, St. John describes the three groups who will reign with Jesus during the millennium. "These shall war against the Lamb." Now he's talking about the forces of Antichrist. "And the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords and King of kings. And they that are with him," that is, with Jesus at the Battle of Armageddon, "are called, chosen, and faithful." This is not just one group. The called are the raptured Protestants. The chosen, or elect, refer to the protected Catholics, and the faithful are the holy martyrs, which we have been discussing. Now in Matthew's Olivet Discourse, Jesus talks about these same three groups. "And he shall send his angels with a great sound of trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect," those are the protected Catholics, "from the four winds," that means from on earth, "from one end of heaven," those in one end of heaven are the raptured Protestants, "to the other end of heaven." Those in the other end of heaven are these martyrs of the Antichrist who we have been talking about. Thus we see from St. John's cryptogram that only those martyrs during the reign of the Antichrist will return and reign during the millennium. That's what St. John means by henceforth. And you understand what henceforth refers to when you understand the true chronology of these end times. The three groups that we have mentioned, the protected Catholics, the raptured Protestants, and the holy martyrs. These are the three groups who will reign with Jesus when he returns on Mount Zion for Armageddon. And if you would like more information or would like a copy of my book, Revelation Unraveled, simply write to the address you see on your screen.